let's get into what we want to talk about, Mina, which is just the most incredible weekend of drama in Serie A. I mean, God, I think being honest for me, Mina, like I don't look at this season and think, wow, this is the pinnacle in my time watching Serie A of the best quality of teams at the top of Serie A. But it's one of the most entertaining ends to a season I think I can think of in recent memory, because it's been a long time since we've had this much this close for title race, and also this many ups and downs along the way.
Yeah, it's funny because when I think of Inter and Milan, who are, let's be honest now, considering what happened over the weekend, the two that are now challenging for the Scudetto, because I think we can agree that Napoli's out. I think of it as being Barella versus Tonali, and that's why it makes me even more excited, because you just think of all these, like, you just saw how much it meant to Tonali to just get that goal, to do everything that's possible to pierce, the defense that had held on for so long, And Barella was exceptional in his match against Roma, has been exceptional. He had a wobble, Inzaghi brought him back on and gave him the confidence required. And I do like that it is, for me, a midfield is the reason that you win games and you lose games. Your midfield is very much the brain of everything. And I like that both these teams, of course, they have Brozovic, of course, they have Kessie, these two sides, but they also have Barella and Tonali.
Well, it's got everything, this race for me, now that it is down to the two Milan clubs. I mean, first of all, just the fact that it is the two Milan clubs who both sort of in parallel, not at exactly the same time, but both went to these sort of mini slumps for a few years and have now come back up together. So right away, you've got the derby, right? And right in the midst of this league derby, we even had a Coppa Italia semi-final in which they played the derby, and of course Inter won that 3-0 last week, and that was sort of I think probably weighing on everyone a little bit coming into this weekend. But then further twists and turns in the tale for me this weekend, and just little subplots. But to get to the games, Inter, the first up on Saturday night, beat Roma 3-1. And guess who's at the heart of everything? Hakan Çalhanoğlu with 2 assists and a hand in the other goal as well, who joined from Milan last season. So many sort of knotted up subplots. I don't know if you want to say anything about Çalhanoğlu, Mina, but I think certainly that's one part of this story. But I think the big part of this story, watching the game on Saturday night, I was watching and thinking, well, these are the champions, right? And I thought it because they are in this big game against a Roma team who are unbeaten in 12 games, who we sung their praises in recent weeks, saying, look, Mourinho's turned the ship around. I looked at this game and thought, well, having said all that about Roma, Inter are superior all across the midfield with Brozovic, Barella, and Çalhanoğlu, and then Dumfries having a great game, and Perisic at the wing backs. I thought the whole five across the middle of the pitch, it's a non-contest. Inter are just better in that area of the pitch.
I have to say something about Inter. There's been so much about when we're talking about teams like Napoli, like Inter, like Milan, like Juventus, the top 4 teams, let's say, in Italy. And then this whole conversation about who deserves it between Napoli and Milan and Inter. When Inter play football, especially for me this season than last season, the complexity of their tactics, their ability to attack via so many different options, their midfield, the strength of the wings, their ability to get the best out of those 3 midfielders in the middle. It is exceptional to watch. Really, it's exceptional to watch when you consider the fact that they've lost 3 huge players from last season that were very much the main men in Achraf Hakimi and Romelu Lukaku and Christian Eriksen. Mm-hmm. Of course, Brozovic stayed. Of course, Perisic stayed. And they are so, so vital to this team. But when Inter is singing and has its whole team available to them, which they have, and they have been lucky to have had the whole side available to them for most of the season, unlike Milan, unlike Napoli, so on and so forth. But what they can do with the side, and I still stand by it, for me, they were a little bit basic tactically under Antonio Conte. They are not basic under Inzaghi. Each goal, each performance when they are when they are in tune is delightful to watch. They are so unpredictable in their ability to play the game. And for me, it's just Çalhanoğlu has got 10 assists for a guy that's just come in. I mean, yes, he's played in Serie A, but he's arrived in a new club. That's an astonishingly good performance, an astonishingly good ability to really embed himself within the tactical experience. This is a side that has still managed to maintain their defensive solidity at the back, as well as remain attackingly brilliant. And that is huge as well. When you consider the fact that Lautaro Martinez has had lots of, breaks. We didn't know if he's working with Dzeko. There was a point where, 2 games ago where Dzeko played on his own and you're like, wait, hold on. Is there even a need for Lautaro Martinez? God, yes, there's a need for Lautaro Martinez. He's been exceptional in these last few matches. And yes, this is just the team that honestly, when it plays, and it has played on this, in this brilliance for so much of the season, it is by far the best team in Serie A. Their game on the pitch is by far the very best. And what is interesting about this side is that it's so psychological. It has a 1-1 draw against Milan, and then it defeats Napoli on the 21st of November. Do you remember that? And then it was like this huge win, and bam, they were unstoppable. 8 consecutive victories, astonishing performance after astonishing performance, and you're like, wow, this Inter's wow. Then something happens, they fall apart, they beat Juventus, and they're back to being this amazing team again. It's funny because emotions have really sort of turned their team around in good ways and in bad ways. Because emotions are what stopped them, like winning the derby against Milan when Giroud managed to win that, in their collapse against Lazio, where they felt like they were harshly done by. And this is when you could feel like Simone Inzaghi would get angry with them and being like, we could still win the game, like stop letting this determine everything. But at the same time, emotions is also what has given them the confidence to be like, you know what, we're going to do this. We've defeated Lazio and we defeated Napoli. Sorry, we defeated Napoli and we're going to go on this run. We defeated Juventus and we're going to go on this run. And now the Scudetto is ours. And you feel it, like I'm scared of them now. Like, Milan have to really fight to do this, whereas I don't feel like Inter have to fight to do this. So that's the difference between those two sides for me.
Yeah, and let's come on to Milan in a bit. I do agree with you that that's the big picture of this season. I think that narrative rings true for me. I think when it comes to this sort of specific game, super interesting to hear. First of all, Simone Inzaghi, I thought was really honest in his post-game comments. Said, "I was afraid of this game coming off the derby. I thought, we've just played this huge derby, got 3 days to prepare for this Roma team that are coming in hot, as it were, and." Tactically, I think the decision by Mourinho to try and play Mkhitaryan deep clearly backfired. But I felt like, and look, losing Cristante is a blow. Would you have been better off putting Veretout into that team to start off with? Very possibly, but regardless, I don't personally feel like that was where the game would have been decided. Perhaps if if Mancini scores that header he gets early in the game, perhaps you'd have a different game then if they just score a goal. But I never felt like this Inter team looked ruffled, and I think the psychology of it is definitely really fascinating because Inter have not been this confident at all times, and I think there's individuals you can point out and say they haven't been this confident. Clearly, Lautaro is the most obvious one, and I remain, if I'm being totally honest with you, I remain a bit flummoxed by Lautaro because I actually think it's not a pressure situation thing with him, because I think he scored some goals in really big games actually, and I still remember him scoring against Madrid and thinking, wow, this is someone who's totally uncowed by this, in a way that even at the time I was asking myself if Lukaku was cowed by it. But he just seems to get into his own head sometimes, and that dry spell he had for Inter was unsurprisingly very difficult for them. I think the thing that we're going to be talking about next season with them is, if they don't get it done, a new contract, how big of a loss is Perisic going to be? Because I think he's brilliant at the moment. I think he's really, really, really carrying them a lot. But I think that the best piece of business that they do in this coming transfer window has already been done, which is re-signing Brozovic, because I think he's extraordinary. I think he's I think he's no longer underrated in Italy. I think in Italy everyone sees how good he is. I think in an international sense, I'm not sure that people outside of Italy and people who don't watch Serie A appreciate what a good footballer he is. But I think he's really put himself in a category of rare central midfielders who can control games in the world. But then you look at that and you think, yeah, and Calhanoglu and Barella, who you were talking about before, it's just, as you said, such a quality gap, I think, with Roma. And I think that's something that really sort of came home in this game. I think in terms of other subplots of this game, oh, sorry, take my microphone. Other subplots in this game, I do think, of course, Mourinho had been back for the Coppa, but this is Mourinho's first go back in Serie A. The stadium was more full. This was the first time he'd been back at the full San Siro. I thought it was really sort of fascinating how that played out because in the 73rd minute of the game, the whole of San Siro basically started singing Mourinho's name and cheering him. And in the post-game comments, he said that he liked that because they didn't do it until they weren't afraid of us anymore, which I thought was sort of remarkably candid for Mourinho, actually, because he also in the same breath said, football matches last 90 minutes, and for those 90 minutes, I'm your enemy. But, of course, there's a relationship because, we won the treble that endures beyond that. And I thought to myself, it wasn't 90 minutes, Jose. You didn't last for 90 minutes.
Exactly.
But it certainly was correct, his assessment, I think, that they didn't want to give him any love until they knew that this Roma team was dead. And probably it's a bit of an indictment of Roma in this game. Not globally, they've had 12 good games in a row. I'm not going to take that away for one game, but it's an indictment of how big the gap was, that after 73 minutes, Inter's fans thought, yeah, we can sing for him now because this game's over. And indeed, I think Inzaghi thought this game's over because he started making changes left, right, and centre as well, thinking about the game they have to play against Bologna on Wednesday.
It's an interesting one because I was also really scared about Roma because in your head you think this is a team that's obviously very different to the side that they faced and scored 3-0 against in the reverse fixture. In the reverse fixture, it was 3-0. And it was actually the purest form of Inzaghi's football at the time. And what was so stunning about it, was Dzeko, Dumfries and Calhanoglu who scored the goals. Basically, the three replacements of the three that left, right? The three big players that left, the replacements scored a goal, which goes to show you just what Inzaghi has managed to create with that. Having said all of these things, everyone was talking about Roma, it's a different team now, and it is a very different team, but this is where I think where I always talk about coaching is so important. There's substitutions and then there are tactical adjustments as well that can be done via substitutions, but generally speaking, they can also be done without needing that, And when it comes to that, this is for me the super strength of the Italian coach, is the ability to make those tactical adjustments while reading the game and being able to adjust on the 70th, on the 80th, or the 90th minute. Carlo Ancelotti is a beautiful example of that. Sometimes what you get with Italians is that they start matches really well, but then end it really well because of these tactical adjustments. You saw this match, and for example, what I like so much about Inter is that they spot the mistakes and then they try to adjust those mistakes throughout the season. Okay, we're a little bit emotional. Let's try not to be emotional. Let's play Juventus and keep our heads and make sure that we win this game. Let's try to switch off and rely on our self-esteem and our confidence and not get, stopped by or provoked into anything stupid. And they've started to attack all their problems. Another problem that they get a lot is people try to sort of counteract Brozovic's ability in the middle and basically double mark him. They've now effectively found a way that he can overcome that. If someone is closely marking him, there's a whole midfield help around him. They are strong on the wings. They are strong in the middle. So there is all of this that I find is so interesting. But what I didn't understand about Roma is that you've had 12 amazing results in a row. And yet, throughout the match, I feel like nothing was done to really make the right adjustments. You can tell at the time the Mkhitaryan was really not in the right position, and he needs to be unleashed. And in order to be unleashed, he needs to be further forward. Then why didn't you introduce Verity? Why did the substitutions come in the 64th minute? More importantly as well is that the wingers were completely overcome. At the time, it was Dumfries and Perisic are so strong. And those poor wingers for Roma were really struggling. Karsdorp was struggling. And so is I'm sorry, I always forget his name because I don't know how to pronounce it not very well. Zakaus. Do you know?
Sorry,
Zalos.
Zalewski.
That's it. Thank you, Zalewski. You could see they were really struggling. So why not afford them any help? Why not teach your midfield to offer and double up? Because they were really struggling against these two wingers. So it's like there were no tactical adjustments made. It was very much like we're accepting the fact that we're inferior. Listen, even if they made all the right adjustments, I'm not saying that Inter's not going to win this. They are the superior side in Serie A. When they are playing their game, they are the toughest team to beat when they don't have any crumbling issues or emotions coming into it or anything like that. But I don't understand. For me, I didn't feel like Roma really challenged them in the way that they were capable of. And I would have liked to see in a tighter match because Roma were capable of doing that. But overall, what we've seen is that Inter has faced Roma 3 times over the season. And they have scored 8 goals and conceded early 1. And I just don't feel like the difference is that mad. And even that 1 goal is almost like a consolation prize. I would have just liked a little bit more sweat. And a little bit more hard. A little bit like what Lazio did to Milan. And I feel like Roma were capable of it, and they didn't do it.
Yeah, I think that's all totally fair. And I think it's really interesting with Mourinho. I think for a long time, maybe it would be going too far to say he's never been like a tactical coach, but I think for a long time, I haven't thought of him as a particularly strong tactical coach. I think there's other parts he does well. Obviously, I think is when he's good Mourinho, when he's on and doing his best, his greatest talent is always motivation, right? It's always getting under his players' skin, getting them to go through walls for him. And I think that if you go back actually all the way to that treble-winning team at Inter, I think if you went back and read the newspapers when he was in Italy, especially at the beginning before he'd started winning actual trophies, lots of tactical criticism of him. I think initially he was always treated a bit like, you know what, like you coming to our country where we know about tactics and you don't know about tactics. And I'm not sure he's ever got over that in Italian football. I think he's always been, his strength in Italy is the motivation. Whether that's enough, I think it's a really interesting point you make, Mina, that it probably isn't in a game like this against a team where you're just inferior and you need to be more clever. But clever or not, it didn't work. And Inzaghi and his team got the 3 points. I think at that point of the weekend, as I was saying to you before, Mina, I was thinking in the situation, thinking that's the title when it's right there.